Hey, this is Will from Horrors of Horror, and you're about to watch our episode on Annihilation with Lucy and a special guest. But before that, I would like to provide some content warnings for this said episode. This episode concludes depictions of addiction, suicide, torture, self-harm, cancer, medical equipment, possession, body horror, and body dysmorphia. If these topics are too much for you, please do not force yourself to watch this episode, and take care of yourself. But if you are willing to watch it, and if you feel comfortable with that, thank you, and please enjoy the show.
Welcome to Horrors for Horror. This is a podcast where three friends get together and talk about what they're watching in the world of horror. I'm Lucille, but instead it's actually not three friends today because Tabs and Will are out today. But to make up for that, I have a special guest. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am a ACHA, they, them pronouns. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Acha. It's great to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So I wanted to record an episode because the crew, we've all been pretty busy. Tabs has been going through school, and because of that, we haven't really been able to record. But I've wanted to record an episode for so long, and I was talking with Acha about some movies, and we kind of realized hey, we kind of want to talk about one on the podcast. I wanted to have them as a guest for the podcast, and I talked to everyone if that was okay, if it was just me and them, and they're like, oh yeah, go for it. So today, I was about to say we didn't watch today, but today we are talking about Annihilation, 2018 Alex Garland film.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched this a couple of days ago. I actually had to watch this movie again because we were originally just watching this on our own, and then it wasn't until afterwards that I remembered, oh shoot, we were gonna do this for the podcast because you were taking notes the whole time, and I was like, oh yeah. Gosh, so I don't watch it again. But yeah, is there any reason? Because I know we've talked about this quite a few times, but is there a reason in particular why this film stands out to you so much that you wanted to that when I asked if you wanted to be on the podcast, you wanted to cover this?
For one, because I really wanted to do the thing, but you already did the thing, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I feel like this movie is a very nice companion piece to the thing. It has a lot of similarities. You have isolated from the rest of the world. You have this kind of a team in the middle of nowhere, but the circumstances are very different. But there is also a theme of assimilation. I don't know. It's complicated, but also another reason that I wanted to talk about it is more just to finally cement my ideas about it, because otherwise I'm just yeah, that movie sure was a movie, and I want to be able to articulate why I enjoy something in particular.
Yeah, that's kind of another big thing for me. I think I even mentioned after we talked about it, or after we watched it, that I've seen this movie quite a few times now, and I still have such a hard time trying to articulate how it's. I know that I'm gonna say right off the bat, I adore this movie. This is probably one of my favorite movies. I would even go as far to say maybe I don't know if I like it better than Saw, but it is definitely up there. And the reason why I didn't choose this for Saw just instead of Saw was there's a lot of debate as to whether or not Annihilation is actually a horror movie. And I'm here to just say right now, it is a hard sci-fi movie without a doubt, but it is also without a doubt, I think, one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, like
It is,
yeah,
yeah,
like it is absolutely. I wouldn't say that it's a hard sci-fi, but that's for my own reasons.
yeah. hmm Um, but yeah, why don't we just yeah, like I've seen this a few times, and it's really hard for me to talk about because I don't entirely know everything that's happening. So I think this would be a good conversation to go through this. So you want to just jump right into the
Let's
plot?
jump right into it. Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay. So the movie begins with the framing device of an interrogation. Sure, it is probably in the script. It was written as a kind of a debriefing or whatever. But basically, we start with the protagonist, Lena, who is played by my brain, Natalie Portman.
Natalie. Yep, Natalie
Yes.
Portman.
Princess Amygdala.
Yep.
And,
Also, I guess other people in horror would know her as the protagonist in Black Swan.
oh yes, absolutely. I actually have to watch Black Swan soonish, but yeah. So the whole framing device of the movie is that there is one single doctor, undisclosed name, who is wearing like a full hazmat suit, interviewing her, and they're in like one closed off room, and there are and it's like a swarm of doctors on the glass on the other side of the glass. So
yeah,
even though
something happened.
yeah, so and it starts like this. It starts with this idea of scientists kind of like poking and prodding at her, like trying to figure out just what it is that happened, just what it is that is going on.
Yeah, they specifically also the doctor in question. I don't remember his name, but he's played by Benedict Wong, I believe. Most people would know him. He what's his character's name? He's in Doctor Strange as he's just Wong in Doctor Strange. He's Wong in Doctor Strange.
Right.
But specifically, he mentions to her, like, he's like questioning her about like what she experienced, and mentions that she and her team were gone for months, but to her it only felt like days, maybe even weeks at the longest.
Yeah, absolute longest, just like maybe 2 weeks. But yeah, so that already
something clearly happened.
yeah. So basically, we already have this beginning, which is like the framing device. So then we start from the beginning, the real beginning, from the point of view of Lena, the protagonist.
Yes, but also beforehand, I feel like Ish mentioned, like beforehand, like the title drop happens, but we see something soar down to earth and strike a lighthouse.
Yes.
Before that happens.
Yes.
No way that's gonna come back in any way, shape, or form.
No way. There's no way.
Just no way.
Impossible. By the way, yeah. Previous notes before we jump on. Something that I know that I like that I wrote down. Instead of providing help, they essentially put her in a cell. So you don't really see them actually trying to tend to her injuries or anything like that, because she is somewhat injured. I actually don't recall right now.
Yeah.
But instead of actually providing humane care, she is essentially like under a microscope, and there's this illusion of like a one-to-one conversation, but the reality is that this is an interrogation being done by an entire organization, not just this one researcher.
Yeah, like with everyone, especially with everyone outside and just kind of just staying.
Absolutely.
It's and with Benedict Wong's character, hold on, Nick Lomax is his name. I looked it up. With Lomax, being in just a hazmat suit, it's like it's kind of ties into this whole thing of just like like they're kind of they're scared of her. I
absolutely.
sense like.
Absolutely.
Because whatever the heck she experienced, but yeah, specifically just just being in a hazmat suit, it's all like kind of an experiment to them, but like they have no idea what she could do or what happened to her. So
absolutely, they are absolutely terrified of her. It's like at first you have this you're probably given this idea of like, oh, she was exposed to some kind of virus or something, and you think that it's solely a medical thing. But then the researcher mentions this difference in the perception of time. So, well, maybe it is biological, but yeah. And another thing to note, the comet that streaks down towards the lighthouse is not a comet, because it is not leaving behind a vapor or a particle trail. It is leaving behind a trail of like rainbow colored almost gas. It is not a green, it is not red, it is not yellow, it is a combination of everything shifting in between. Color out of space kind of shit.
Yeah. So after the title, we cut to 3 years or like not 3 years specifically. The thing mentioned 3 years. I guess the timeline is specifically 3 years after the particle strikes the lighthouse. But like before her mission, we see that Lena is a professor at a university. She is specifically teaching her class about cancer cells. Which I think kind of plays a bit into and like thing how cancer cells multiply, which I think like plays, I think plays in a bit later with what's her name, Tessa Thompson's character, because I believe they mentioned that she has cancer.
Hold on. Yeah. Sorry. Spoilers for Annihilation.
Spoilers. We're going through the whole plot, so I mean, even just spoilers for Annihilation up at the top.
Let's see. Ventress, the psychiatrist, has cancer. Yes.
Yes.
But cancer also is when this movie came out, there was a flood, and I do mean a flood of YouTube videos that went on and on, like ending explained, what happened, and all that. As in, you know, good old basic lack of media literacy kind of shit.
I specifically tried to avoid watching those. Not to say that I don't think those videos have some worth, but specifically I try to avoid watching those because I like to try and figure out like my own meaning about things, see what like I can take away, unless it's like a thing where I specifically have no idea, like but like I specifically don't try and watch those videos. But yeah, no shade to any of them, but yeah, there were so many of these when I was just
some shame to some of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if you're watching one of those videos for a plot synopsis, that's fair. But if you're trusting somebody else to give you like an explanation for the metaphors and all that, that's valuable, but sometimes people just emerge with the worst possible takes from a movie. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, one big this whole thing about cancer, they don't tell you. The scene does not begin with her telling you that, telling the audience that it's a cancer cell. It's specifically just talking about how a cell will reproduce, shows the process of mitosis, the spread of life, And this idea is basically drilled into the viewer. Despite everything, life demands survival. It is not a question of, I'd rather not, or I will, blah, 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 blah. No, buddy, you're going to survive. Your cells demand it. This is an idea that is like compulsory survival almost. A lot of the characters in this movie have self-destructive tendencies, or possibly, well, trigger warning for this shit, suicidal, either ideation or like attempts.
Yes.
But nevertheless, they are still alive in some sense. I don't think that there is any character that truly, absolutely dies 100% in this movie.
I think maybe the closest one is Gina Rodriguez's character. I forget her name.
Possibly.
I'd say if there's any, that's probably the closest. Because as far as well, I'll get into that when we get there.
So we learned that she's a teacher. She's giving this class and all that. That's seen with her students' ends. She comes across this other teacher, Dan, who seems to be friendly with her, and she seems to be friendly with him, but there is an unspoken tension in the air. Like a kind of very odd kind of awkwardness. Like, these are not just co-workers.
He specifically asks, like, hey, I'm having a barbecue. Do you want to come over? And she insists that she just wants to paint the bedroom.
Yep. Yeah. And in fact, this other teacher, as a fact, says, hey, it's already been a while. Why don't you, it won't kill you to just, interact socially with others. But she is very adamant about it.
I feel like we should mention that because we didn't say this, about over a year ago, her husband just went missing. Mm-hmm. He went on some sort of mission and just never returned. So he's basically just like, hey, I think he specifically mentions how to honor his memory, you should try and get out there and be around people, but she doesn't. Yeah. She doesn't want to because guess she wants to be at the house, and I took this as she wants to be at the house in hopes that one day he might return. So then she doesn't miss that. That's how I read it at least.
No, that's fair. Yeah, this is one of the things that I wrote down. This idea of the cycle of life, right? Things demanding to survive, they adapt, they change. Nothing ever truly dies. However, Lena is not a part of this life cycle. She is not dynamic, she is static. She is stuck and almost haunted by losing her husband, Kane, who is played by Oscar Isaac. You may know him as Poe Dameron from the Star Wars movies, or the freako scientist guy from Ex Machina.
Yes, he is also going to be in I assume he's going to be in Spider-Verse because there is a post-credit sequence where he plays someone in Spider-Verse. I specifically also knew him before this as there's a character in Drive that he plays. I think he's Carey Mulligan's boyfriend in Drive.
Oh, you mean the freaking the criminal guy?
Yes.
But
yeah.
With that, another thing to point out, Lena wasn't lying when she's talked about painting the house. She is painting the house.
We cut and she is painting the house. There's a Crosby, Stills and Nash song
Yeah.
playing.
Uh-huh.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song playing. And while she's painting the house, someone enters. Like we see the door open and we see someone walking, and we cut to see Lena painted in the bedroom, and she turns and looks at the door frame, and Kane just slowly walks into frame.
He's just there.
He's just there. And she embraces him, but then immediately cuts to her questioning him about where he's been for the past year.
Yeah, there's like a jump cut there, but yeah, like her initial instinct is just to like go to him and embrace, kiss, and all. But through it all, he does not seem to react at all.
Yeah.
And then starts the questioning, and to any question that Lena makes, where were you? When did you get back? Did something happen? The only thing that he can say, that he can answer, is I don't know.
Yeah. And so something's clearly up, and it's especially made so when Kane drinks some water and then says that he's not feeling well, and there's a bunch of blood in the glass, and then immediately cuts to him in an ambulance to the hospital spitting up blood.
Oh yeah. By the way, why there's this idea of distortion and mirrors, because there's a very nice shot of Lena handing Kane this glass of water, and the camera lingers on the shot of the glass of water specifically, and it shows how like their hands are kind of like reflected by the glass, and so when it creates this very odd effect in that it looks as though their hands are warped into one thing, which connects to the song that is playing in the background, which is something like, they are one person, they are two together. And that reminds me of that, and that makes me think back again to this idea of the cell. When we were seeing this presentation that she was doing at her school, you see mitosis, which is one cell becomes two cells, becomes four cells, becomes, and so on to the power of, and so on. So there we go. The movie, a lot of people said like, oh, I have no idea what this movie is about, but already you can already kind of like feel that this is a metaphor for somebody suffering with cancer, or who has a loved one who is suffering cancer. And what also makes me think of that is because we already had this idea that Kane is dead. Killed in action, even. And now Kane is dying again.
And specifically now, she is Lena, instead of just hearing that he might be dead, is watching him die in front of her.
Blood is just pouring out of his mouth. A sort of death in duplicate. So, with all that, calls an ambulance, is riding in the ambulance with him, and they are driving along the road. It's like really dark, and they're suddenly surrounded by the good old FBI shit, Men in Black kind of like cars. I think there's a helicopter, I don't recall, but basically they force the ambulance to go off-road, and they are essentially holding Lena, the ambulance drivers, and Kane, who is still coughing up blood, at gunpoint. And then they just like tranquilize Lena and blackout.
We get is this when we get the title card that says Area X, or is that later?
Yes.
Yes. We get a title card that says Area X, and Lena wakes up in a compound, with this with this character named Dr. Ventress, who is part of an organization called the Southern Reach. Dr. Ventress is specifically played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who I mainly know from she's been in quite a few stuff. She was in The Hateful Eight, but I specifically know her as Dr. Girder in Possessor, which she's basically just the same character as Ventress in the movie Possessor 2. I also that's a very good movie. I also really recommend Possessor, but it is also very violent, but it is very good. She specifically tells Lena that Kane was part of an expedition into a location that's outside of the compound called the Shimmer, which formed over a few years from a surrounding lighthouse.
Yep. Basically expanding outward like a circle.
Yes. And Kane is also the only person who has returned from the Shimmer alive.
Yeah. Nothing else has ever returned. Not drones, not animals, not soldiers, not
the rest of his team.
Nothing. Only Kane. And now he's dying.
And Ventress basically just decides, we need to know what's in there. We're gonna send out a new team, and we want you, Lena, to be a part of it, because your husband was also to kind of complete your husband's mission, so to speak.
There's also a flashback around this time, which gives us just a little bit of insight into Lena's mindset. She's talking to Kane, it's a flashback to happier times in the relationship, and they start talking about the body, how the cells eventually die, and Lena mentions that aging is a mistake, a genetic mistake. It is not something. It is something that occurs only because our genes are not perfect. So
thank you for bringing this up, because the synopsis doesn't have these flashbacks, and I wanted to talk about the flashbacks, but I didn't know when they happened. Thank you for bringing this up.
I have notes, so I'll be piping in.
Thank God.
But yeah, this already gives you this idea that in Lena's mind, aging, the flow of time, almost, is unnatural or a mistake.
Yeah.
Again, repeats the idea that she is not part of the cycle of life.
Yes, and it I think also fades in with the themes a lot as well. Which there's a specific point in this movie that I want to talk about so much when we get there, that I think it is such a beautiful moment, and I think reinforms how I feel about the movie. But yeah, I will talk. I might talk for a while about when we get there.
Oh, certainly.
But specifically, I don't know why I keep saying specifically. Ventress introduces Lena to the rest of the team. We have Josie Raddick, who's played by Tessa Thompson. She's a physicist. We have an anthropologist, Cassie Shepard, played by Tuva Novotny. I do not recognize her in anything.
Wait. Hold on. Cassie is a geomorphologist. I have the list here. Hold on. We have the paramedic.
You told me the IMDb plot synopsis is lying to me?
Yeah, the IMDb plot synopsis is lying to you.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk it?
So yeah. Annie, so it's not so much that Ventress introduces Lena to these others. It's that Lena kind of like wanders into them while like hanging out in this compound.
Yeah.
They already have this idea that, okay, we're assembling a team. We're going to send them out there. And it is unspoken, but basically Lena is kind of like a hostage. She is not supposed to leave the compound. She has no means of knowing where she even is.
Yep.
And there's also something nicely done about the use of color, because the shimmer, just like the trail that behind the comet, is visible. It is like a film of it's like a thin film of an oil slick, almost, in that it reflects color, and it has like this weird rainbow mix of stuff, but it looks filthy, in a sense, like a filthy rainbow, almost.
Yeah. There's a physicist, a geomorphologist, and then a paramedic, Anya Thornton, who is played by Gina Rodriguez, who she's been around for a bit, but I'm gonna be honest, I only really know her because she was the voice of Velma in Scoob.
Seriously?
Yeah, she plays Velma.
I mean, that's fair.
She plays Velma in Scoob. Yeah. She's been in some other stuff, but that's just what I know her from. She was on Jane the Virgin for a few years. But yeah, like I mainly know her in this and Scoob. But yeah. And Lena specifically. Why do I keep saying specifically? That's the word of the day.
It's crutch words. It is how it is.
Yeah. She kind of makes a mental choice to not tell anyone about her connection to the mission.
Yeah. She does not mention anything about Kane. Specifically, like she sits down to like eat or whatever. It's specifically Anya who approaches her and invites her to sit over with the team that's essentially leaving. Everybody's there except for Ventress. And there we meet Cassie, Josie, and all. Also, by the way, Anya's a lesbian. Hell yeah.
Let's go.
And there are hints throughout the movie that Anya and Cassie had a fling. Specifically because you have characters that call Cassie like Cass or like Doctor whatever. And Anya specifically like refers to Cassie as Cassie. Or what's the word that I'm looking for? There's a specific nickname that only Anya uses to refer to Cassie. It's a variation of the name. But yeah, every single one of these individuals has fundamental, like, has problems, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In order, Anya is a paramedic, and she is a addict. It's not clear of what. It is implied to be probably some kind of either morphine or heroin or maybe even just an alcoholic. We don't know. Cassie, the geomorphologist, her daughter died of leukemia. So here we go again with the idea of cancer and the death and the pain that it can cause. And Josie, the physicist, there's a very explicit line in the movie of the reason that she has long sleeves is to hide the scars. So, self-harm.
And then, yes.
So, and Lena, as a biologist, has a specialty in cancer cells. So, the cancer metaphor is just rammed into you over and over and over and over.
The place. Then we step by step we get a title card that says The Shimmer.
Yep.
And the four of them head into the shimmer, and it is like it looks beautiful. Like it's such a like a cool shot of them walking in, like the four of them on the ground, and then like just this big wall of like what Acho was mentioning, just this like oil slick that's just reflecting every single color, and it's like moving, and they're like walking. It's so cool.
Oh yeah.
Walking
Absolutely.
in, the land is comprised of a bunch of plant-based organisms. There's a lot of plants everywhere. None of their gear works. They don't know how they after 4 days pass, and they have no idea how they got there. Their GPS doesn't work.
Yeah, basically, like when the camera they walk into, there's like this shot of them walking from the compound to the shimmer, and oh, by the way, the shimmer there's this ink, there's like this looming threat that the shimmer is going to continue expanding until goodness knows they already had to evacuate one small town under the premise of a gas leak or whatever, but the shimmer is still expanding. They need to stop it somehow, so they're just throwing whatever they can at it and trying to figure out just what the fuck is going to work, because pretty soon it's going to start like expanding into heavily populated areas, and there's no telling when it will stop expanding.
Yeah.
So that's a threat. Lena is not originally part of this expedition, but she approaches Ventress to be a part of it. Ventress is asking why, and basically, Lena, her motivation in this moment is, in a sense, almost to she says that it's the only way that she can help Kane, which I'll get back to that later.
Yeah. They're wandering through the shimmer. They're documenting their findings through cameras. But yeah, like a lot of their equipment doesn't work. They walk past a shack, and something just bleeps out and pulls Radek, Josie, into the shack, and like tries to drown her. And Lena saves her, and what do they find coming out of the water but an alligator.
Yep.
That is just does not look natural. It is like pale, covered in blood.
Yeah, it's like an albino alligator, and even before they start shooting, it already looks wounded, as though it has already been killed, but it's still going.
Yeah. So Lena shoots it dead, and they open the mouth, and so there's the gator teeth, but then further down the throat, there's another set of teeth, and I don't know if they mentioned this in the movie, but it specifically is shark teeth.
Yeah. Basically, even before this, while they were walking into this like swamp area, Lena actually like points out that the flowers make no sense here, because they're all coming from the same plant, but they're all different flowers. It does not make sense, but they all come from the same plant. It reminds me actually of this idea of grafting, in which a branch from a tree can be, under certain conditions, grafted onto another tree. And so you can end up with some pretty freaky stuff, like the tree that it... What was it? There's like this one tree that it has... I don't know how many, like, grafted branches onto it. It essentially has fruit all year round, and is like eternally... It's like a one-tree orchard. And it's beautiful to look at. But
it looks gorgeous.
But what if we applied it to living beings? And that's when we see the alligator. And even from the outside, like, okay, it's albino, but it's recognizable as an alligator. As soon as you as soon as it starts opening its mouth, and then when they open the mouth again to examine, the inside is completely different. It is this weird weird fucking like a freaking food processor inside there. Like it's just teeth all around. Teeth all around.
It's disgusting.
Oh yeah.
It's so creepy. I kind of love it.
And this is another thing. Right before the shack, we have a flashback of Lena having an affair with Dan, the other teacher.
Yes.
And this is also another thing to keep in mind. In the first flashback, Lena and Kane are kind of like looking up at the sky, and they can see the moon, even though it's like daylight. Kane actually remarks upon this. And in this flashback, in which Lena has an affair with Dan, besides some gratuitous shots of her back, moving in rhythm, there's also a shot of the moon. So there's this idea of almost that the moon is witness to this act of infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And almost immediately after having had sex with Dan, Lena is showing like these signs of like, we shouldn't have done this was a mistake. And it's this strange thing in which she seems to be blaming Dan, which isn't like
great. It's not great.
Dan isn't blaming her either. Dan does not blame her, but she is looking for somebody to blame for what she has just done. So yeah, Dan specifically mentions that she spends more time waiting for Kane to come back than actually spending time with Kane when he is off duty.
Yeah. And basically like I don't entirely know if this is explained, but I don't know if this is fully explained. Maybe it is, and I'm just forgetting. I'm wording this into my own thing. This whole mission is because no one has come out. It's basically just a suicide mission.
Yep.
And so this kind of works into that. Just kind of feels like she feels guilty about all this, and so this kind of serves as motivation for her going into this, because like she cheated on her husband and kept trying to find a way to shift the blame, and she feels guilty. So
yeah,
if she can just go in here and die, that's basically good to her. I don't know if they explained.
She's looking for some way to atone for her mistakes, even though she could move on, but she can't. The pain just keeps her in place. Another note that I made, that when none of their equipment works, the satellite shit doesn't work, even though they should have excellent signal, because there should be about 20 satellites orbiting over them right now. Only the sun could be relied upon to give some kind of direction, and even the sun rays themselves are influenced by the shimmer, as in they look a bit distorted, and the sun glaring in the horizon isn't like white or only a warm natural color. It's like a distorted kind of like almost violet light for seconds, this rainbow shit. There is a consistent, specifically in this whole scene in the shack, there's a consistent imagery of a rainbow and of an oil slick. The shack is abandoned. It is like, it's like it's like sunken into the swamp by about 45 degrees almost. Like that's how when when Cassie gets like yanked back really suddenly, she is like stuck in like the watery part of it. Doesn't matter. Um, there's this idea that one of the characters says that this it's as if the it's as if this place can only duplicate or echo whatever enters or exists in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads us to where they get to Fort Amaya.
Yes. Yeah. Beforehand, we basically just kind of tell us like what we already mentioned. That's like who these characters are, like what they are, but they specifically mention about Ventress also that no one really knows much about Ventress, but they do not have anybody in their life. No friends, no family, no partner, no children, nothing.
Ventress is described as having allowing no concessions. Mm-hmm. She's extremely cerebral. It's an odd thing. She's extremely cerebral, but at the same time is sometimes given to metaphors and like more flowery like descriptions.
Yeah.
It's also later revealed that she has cancer. So again with the metaphor.
Arrive at they arrive at Fort Amaya, and there's a bunch of mutations in the base. Some of them are even some of them are malignant. Basically, they kind of feel like tumors breaking up throughout the base.
There's a lot of like there's like lichen, and like fungi just cropping up all over the place. There's this idea of mold, like a very unnatural green, yellow, almost like vomit. Honestly.
The colors of everything are just really beautiful. While wandering around, they find a camera in the base, and this is when I think this is probably the one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen in just anything ever. It's a camera where they open up and turn it on, and it's a video of Kane and the rest of his crew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like
something to note is that Kane in this short video has an unkempt beard. His like skin is filthy and bloody. His hair is ragged. The Kane that Lena sees at the beginning of the movie is well dressed, has like perfectly slicked back hair, and just like clean as hell. Very groupie.
I didn't even notice that. I thought you were just making a point, just being like, he's unkempt. He looks kind of sexy here. I didn't even realize that, like in the thing that like, wait,
he's super
he
sexy.
Actually looks different.
He's super sexy.
Yeah, but, no way. Yeah, like 100%. But yeah, and there's someone filming and it's just like this. It's like dark, but there's just this bright light shining, and one of their team members is like pinned against a wall by one of the other team members, and Oscar Isaac pulls out a knife and just starts cutting into his stomach, like making a rectangle in his stomach, and that alone is already disgusting.
Yeah,
when they peel back the flesh.
Yeah, because the other guy doesn't even really react. Yeah, he's grunting in pain, but he doesn't scream out or anything. He's just grunting in pain, and I feel like that can be even worse to hear than pure screaming, because a lot of horror like screams, you get desensitized to them. No, in this one you are forced to suffer. Yeah.
But yeah, they take off like the bit of flesh, and his intestines are moving around.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not already awful,
Oh yes.
Kane puts his hand in and pulls one of them out, and it's still moving around his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it is disgusting. And
It brings to
basically,
mind intestinal parasites, snakes,
mhm.
and this also brings to mind the coiling of snakes, and Ouroboros, and Ouroboros.
Yes.
I don't know how you say it, but yeah.
I don't know what either. This is all you, but I don't know.
The snake eating its own tail, kind of.
Yes.
Gives that idea.
And
the recording finishes with Kane, like, it's actually really well done because there's basically a found footage film inside this horror movie.
yes. There's actually a couple. But yeah, and I think that's the scariest part to me because it really just kind of makes this feel like a lot real. Like you're watching these people, and not only that you're like Lena is watching like her husband after he came home and is just like basically just like desensitized and like coughing up blood and just like doesn't know how to speak. She is watching him cut open some man and feeling around in his insides.
Yeah.
And Gina Rodriguez basically just turns up the camera and is like, oh, okay, so yeah, they went insane. They're insane.
They went insane.
And just completely skipping over the fact that his insides are moving, and when someone brings it up, she's just like, oh, that was a trick of the light. There's no way that's real. Which
she specifically brings up that, like, as a paramedic, she has seen a lot of fucked up shit, and she says, no, yeah, your brain makes shit like that up. It's a trick of the light.
And I in the moment was just like, I slightly brought up, but you like developed on a bit more, basically just being like trying to make excuses for things that you can't understand, and that is like another big thing in this movie. Is just like it is just like inhuman horrors beyond our comprehension, and we try to find any way we can to just kind of like it's very Lovecraftian. Just like we try to find some way to just like reason with it, just like and same way we try and find some way to reason with the things that happen in our life, like this, like Lena trying to reason with what happened with her husband and why she did what she did, just trying to find some way to reason like this isn't what's actually happening, like things are okay, this isn't what's happening, and not wanting to accept the truth of the matter that things are incredibly fucked up right now.
Yeah. And after Anya basically like shuts off the camera, they keep exploring the fort, and that's when we meet what I like to call the Flower Man, because it is it's in like there's like this empty pool with stagnated water and stagnant water, and there is the lower half of a man on a chair fused to the wall behind him, and everything else, it's like an explosion went off, but it's all glued in place by fungus, moss, mushroom-like formations, and you specifically see that the skull and the jaw are like split apart into this like horrific, like it's like a mockery of somebody screaming.
It is such a beautifully grotesque shot.
Yeah.
I adore it. It looks incredible.
It gives and it also gives off the idea, because of the same color usage and the like look of the fungus and all that, it gives off the idea that there's also this like visual of like everything, all of the rot, all of the lichen, like spreading outward from this guy's like corpse. So there's this idea that
Yes.
he has that the rot within him has expanded and is now infecting the entire building.
Yeah, it's I love it.
Yeah, it's this idea of Forza Maya is all about rot. It's the dead and decay that is then reutilized as scaffolding for new life. Because, yeah, this guy's probably dead, but you don't know that.
Yeah, 'cause there's life blooming. There's life blooming from him.
Oh, yeah.
Like if life, it's it is just a circle of life. Like we all like his remains becoming something that you would see in nature, and that it's just like a reincarnation in some sense. We never leave the earth really. We all just sort of stay and come back in life form of some kind. And there's another bit that further reinforces it later on, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
There's an idea that is presented in this part, specifically with this of the soldier with the flower man, who was exactly the same soldier who Kane ripped open and had the guts going around. It's this idea that it being the shimmer, the change it causes, or whatever, it is already within you. And that
yes.
even now, it is already too late for any of the members of this expedition team. Like they're already doomed.
Yes. Oh yeah.
They spend the night in the Forta Maya, and they set up like a watch cycle and all that. It's nighttime. Ventress is keeping watch. Lena wakes up in the middle of the night, and she goes off to chat with Ventress about something. While they're chatting, there's only the warm light that Ventress is holding, and nothing else. Ventress is consistently portrayed with this idea of her holding a lamp or holding light, but not necessarily in like a benevolent way. I don't know how to say this, but yeah.
Like
While the two of them are talking in the middle of the dark, there's this sudden screaming, and there's this sudden screaming because they notice that, oh hey, there's a fence here, there's a hole in it now, and
yeah.
Cass is taken by something that seems to be a bear, just,
God.
and it
Yeah.
happens as quickly as it disappears. Like, you don't get a good look at it. It just vanishes. Just drags her along and gone.
Yeah. Another thing that they mention is another thing that just kind of reinforces like some things that are, they talk about like the mission. This is before the bear, and Lena asks Ventress why Kane like went on the mission, and Ventress suggests that Kane went on the mission for some self-destructive reasons. Which she says is something that is hardwired into human DNA. This idea that we have the idea of that at some point all humans will lose control and find themselves doing things that they wouldn't normally do, and that kind of is different from who they are, and just and reinforce a bit more of this too. But yeah, they then the bear happens, and in the morning, um, they they proceed to the forest, further to the lighthouse, and uh, Lena finds Shepard's shoe, and
She's
goes up to try and
Yeah,
find
she
Shepard.
splits off from the group to kind of investigate. Anya wants to go with her, but Lena insists on going alone. Anya already has a bit of a kind of has like a bitter expression, so and Anya does not seem to be holding up very well. This definitely won't come back to bite us in the ass later.
Yeah, or to bite you in the jaw later.
Lena, so she goes off to investigate. At this point, Anya was already like giving the idea of, hey, we should turn back. We should turn back. We should go back right now. And Ventress, who doesn't really care, is basically saying, look, I'm just going to go. You can catch up whenever you want. And she just fucking leaves.
Yeah, she just goes on ahead.
She just goes.
It's like, okay,
Yeah. And then Lena convinces Josie and Anya to continue the traveling with the logic that if they reach the lighthouse, then they'll be on the coast, and then they just have to follow the coastline, and they'll eventually get out of the Shimmer's sphere of influence.
Yes. Doesn't also don't they doesn't Lena just come back after she finds Shepard's body, or am I completely
There are several things in that synopsis that are not that are not accurate. The Baritone, while Lena is looking around for Cassie's body, she comes across what appears to be a single doe, as in a female stag, a deer.
Yes.
She sees only one, and then it seems to split into two. It's unknown whether it's a trick of perspective or if the single doe actually became two. One doe is pure white with flowers with flowering branches instead of horns. The other is mottled brown with bare sticks instead of horns.
Yes.
And they both move in exactly the same way. Just barely, a quarter of a second of a difference in their movements. They echo each other perfectly. They are mirrored. Cassie is found by Lena. She is dead as hell. And she is found almost like in a resting position, almost at the base of a tree. And it's a very beautiful shot for something that is, quite frankly, horrific. But it gives off this strange idea of peace, almost. And Cassie is essentially, like, Lena sees the body, confirms that, yep, that's Cassie. And she just goes on back to the group, and they keep on moving.
They continue walking, and they find a house, and outside of it there are tons and tons of plant-like structures, or just plant structures that look like bodies. They look like standing humans. Radic, I feel like I should just call it Josie specifically, begins to theorize that the Shimmer is like trying to is like scrambling around DNA and trying to reform life, which is why all the animals and the plants are so different, and human, and also like the plants can look like humans, or there's like human plants. It's scrambling all of the DNA together.
Oh yeah.
In some attempt to, I would assume, some attempt to create some form of life, but because there is so much, it's hard. It's just been morphing in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. The specific phrase is this idea that the shimmer does not outright destroy things; it refracts things.
Yes.
Not, and that extends to everything: DNA, radio waves, thoughts, your mind, your inner body, and there is here we go. I'm going through my notes again.
Mm-hmm.
Not obliterated, refracted. And while they're setting up camp, there's this sense of a very quiet loss of control. Ventress no longer has any kind of professional control over the situation as she used to. Anya is not coping with the situation. Josie is the only one that seems to be like at peace, and she seems almost pleased to see to figure out the shimmer. Here we have a flashback, and we are informed that the affair that Lena had with Dan happened before the assignment that Kane was sent off on. Kane was sent off on multiple assignments, but the affair happened before this one. And so, affair was before Kane was reputed as KIA, killed in action. And there's this idea that Kane may have already known about the affair in some degree. So they go to sleep, but they're also suddenly woken up by Anya, who has lost her fucking marbles.
Yes.
I'm handing over the baton. I'm handing you the speaking stick.
Yes, I'm grabbing the speaking stick. She knocks everyone out, and Lena wakes up and finds and is tied, and her Josie and Ventress are tied to chairs, and Anya starts talking about and it starts talking about like paranoia, and suggests that Lena killed Shepard, and that everyone's just kind of going insane, and then threatens to, and then she starts like being scared, like she feels something is inside of her, and that like she feels, and like this, she's like, I want to cut it out, but then instead says, well, maybe I don't have to do it to myself, but I could do it to one of you guys. And so she threatens to cut them open, and then you just hear Shepard crying out for help in the background.
Mm-hmm. Cassie just screaming for help in the background. Anya
it's such a horrifying sound.
Absolutely. Anya immediately stops. She's like seconds away from cutting into who's I think she was about
Lena,
to cut to Lena.
It's either Lena or Josie, I don't remember.
Yeah. Also, funny little thing. The order in which they're seated is Josie, Lena, Ventress. And what does that give you? You have Josie, who, is a physicist, but is very emotional, very artistic, very articulate about her feelings. Ventress, the psychologist, who is cold, calculating, and all that. And you have Lena in the middle, the one who combines those two elements to a certain degree. Anya also, another thing that fuels Anya's doubts and suspicions is that she found out that the locket that Lena had around her neck had Kane. Kane, the same individual who she just a little while ago, at least from her perspective, was tearing open a man to look at his intestines.
Yup.
So,
oh boy.
And Lena had given the impression that she had no idea about anything about the expedition. So, Anya now has this idea. Hey, Lena's a fucking liar. And that is what kind of allows her to justify it to herself, allows her to justify what she's doing.
Yes.
Hey, you're a liar, so I have to protect myself. If our positions were switched, you would absolutely be cutting open my stomach, which maybe wouldn't happen, but we don't know. Maybe it would.
Just another thing of trying to find some way to cope and think of some way to justify what you're doing. Basically, Anya runs out.
Anya runs out to answer the call of Cassie.
Yes. I don't entirely remember what happens.
There's this sudden...
that,
there's a sudden crunch. There's a crunching, a biting sound. And then we start to hear these heavy fucking footsteps enter the house. And through it, you can still hear Cassie screaming for help. And her screams are it's like
warped in with it's the bear. It's the bear.
Yeah.
It's warped in with the growls of the bear, and it is terrifying. And the bear also has its head is the rest of its body looks like a bear, but its head is just the skull of the bear.
It's a solid 3/4 of the bear's face is just ripped off chunks of flesh, and the left side of the face is just exposed bone, and
there's one human eye.
One human baby blue eye, exact same color as Cassie.
Scary. It is so scary. It's so.
And she lumbers forward very slowly, getting closer to Lena. And Lena, Josie, and Ventress all have their backs to this bear, and they're all staying as still as they possibly can to not agitate it. And this monstrosity just approaches and is still screaming for help, and at one point gets approaches its head between them, and it starts screaming, "Help! Me! It's demanding, please fucking help me."
And they can't do anything.
And they are staying completely still, and it's almost as if she wants them to recognize her existence, but they are terrified. And this is when Anya comes around. She has a freaking gun in her hand, a pretty big fucking gun that she picked up at Fort Amaya. And Anya is already limping, but she just lights that fucker up.
She
Unfortunately,
shoots the
it's a
bear.
fucking bear, so it tears into Anya.
She tries to escape and like tries to climb up the stairs, but then the bear like pulls her down. She's screaming. The rest of them are trying to escape. Um, and the bear specifically, it like pummels into Anya and then bites into her face and tears off her jaw in like
Yeah,
one
just
swift movement.
just like punches off her jaw in almost a very in a way that is very reminiscent of the Flower Man.
Yeah, it is such a creepy shot. It has always stuck with me.
Oh,
That,
yeah.
Like before I'd seen this movie a few times, but before like going back and watching like a second time, that was like one of the main shots that I remember. And like specifically like looking at the Flower Man and noticing that.
Yeah.
Oh.
From this, I think it's Lena that grabs a gun and is able to finish off the bear, which collapses. And then it's just like the bear is dead, Anya is dead, Lena, Josie, and Ventress just kind of stagger out one by one. They either fall asleep, they rest, or something. I think that Ventress just fucking leaves outright.
Yeah, Ventress just
Ventress just says, "We're all infected. We're all coming closer and closer to losing it. So I'm going right now to the lighthouse. You're all welcome to catch up. I don't know. Good luck, I guess. You're probably gonna die." And Josie and Lena are left behind in this like abandoned village with the flower beings.
Yeah.
And there's
this scene. This is the scene
and
that
Josie,
I wanted to talk
Josie
about.
says something that is very interesting, in which she's like reflecting and mourning the second death of Cassie.
Yeah.
Because she feels this. What is this, the word that I wrote down? Yeah. This idea of haunting, that the bear, while it was killing Cassie, was in some way integrating those last desperate moments of Cassie into itself. And there's this idea of haunting and losing what you wish to keep.
Yes.
Instead of it is not a peaceful transition from life to death. It is a staggered one. Cassie's body went, but her spirit lived on through the bear, and even that is not completely gone. There's this idea that what remained of Cassie was not a person. It was all the fear, all the anger, all the sorrow that she didn't want others to see.
Mm-hmm. And while explaining this, I forget a lot of the words that she was saying. It's just the visuals of it all is really what makes me adore this scene.
Oh yeah, Josie says the dialogue is something along the lines of, Ventress wants to what's the word? Ventress wants to know it. Ventress wants to solve it. You, as in Lena, want to kill it. But I don't want to do either of those things.
Yes. And this whole time there's like plant life and like roots growing out of her body, like out of her arms, and eventually when she's finished talking, she just stands up and just walks into the woods.
Yeah, you can even see, like beneath her shirt, you can see like flowers start to bloom and poke out almost through the shirt.
Yeah.
And
It's
so, yeah.
it's such a beautiful scene. This is the thing that I want to talk about so much, and like it finding death is not the end. Is not, and there's this sense throughout the movie that with like everything, like that death is not the end, and we all go back to the earth in some form or fashion. We never actually die, and Josie is just straight up like that's straight, like you see that happen. You see her become plant life. You see her like become nature, going and we can I don't remember if we actually see it, but we can assume that she becomes one of the plants structures that is shaped like people.
Mm-hmm.
And she's returning to the earth in some form of life, and which
And it's perhaps one of the most horrifying things about that scene is that Lena is trying to catch up with Josie, but anytime that she seems to be getting closer, Josie is just out of sight. And every time that she sees her, Josie is like, we don't even see her face. You just see like the shoes as she's moving away, or her back as she's moving away. You see less and less of Josie the further away she gets. And
it kind of relates to that I think Josie was. I think it kind of relates to Josie being suicidal.
Oh yeah.
And basically just being like we're not gonna get out of here. I'm already becoming this. My time is basically up, and so the closer Lena tries to get to like help her, the further she is.
Yeah.
From her,
and the thing that
further she gets.
Yeah, and the most horrifying thing, at least to me, is that when Lena, like, finally follows Josie and emerges into an open area, it's not just one plant flower structure. There are several, and she can't tell which used to be Josie.
Yeah.
Any one of them could have been her.
It's such both a beautiful scene and yet a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah.
I love this scene so much. There's so much to it, and it's oh gosh, it is probably the most like emotion based thing I have on this film.
Yeah.
Just this entire scene.
Yeah. And
we get a title card.
Yeah.
That for a completely different movie. This movie they get a title card for The Lighthouse, and then it opens. We see a 4x3 shot of the ocean.
Shut the fuck up.
No. And Lena approaches the lighthouse. Like she finds the lighthouse, and oh my god!
While walking, even before entering the lighthouse, all around it, this is you see the coast. The waves are lapping gently against the shore. The waves seem to be ordinary, but you see these bizarre crystalline formations that look like glass trees sprouting from the sand. It gives this idea of like lightning striking and turning sand into glass, but it's like one step further. Sand turned into glass, which sprang forward and bloomed into these bizarre trees.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm backtracking. This whole podcast, I think, is about backtracking, basically.
No, yeah,
Um,
it's because there's a lot happening in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot that
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
there is
yeah.
to talk about, and that's why I think this is such a good like episode to do because like there's a lot to discuss here and a lot to
Absolutely.
unpack.
Um, Again, with the cancer metaphor, um, what you described of Lena losing Josie to the point that Josie is no longer recognizable, you can draw parallels between that with chemotherapy,
Yes.
laser treatment, but also not necessarily. This isn't exclusive to the cancer metaphor. You can read that as a metaphor for dementia, in which the person that you used to know is slowly being lost. Dementia, Alzheimer's, and it's.
Yeah.
But there's this consistent idea of like the inevitable, and the inevitable just coming whether whether you're ready, whether you can accept it, whether you're gonna fight it, whatever, it is coming. And so, the lighthouse.
Yes.
What does
sorry,
Lena,
fancy.
Lucy? What does Lena see when she enters the lighthouse?
Oh, there's a yeah. She walks in the lighthouse, and there is just a charred skeleton sitting against the wall. And if I remember correctly, the back it's just a skeleton. There's no damage to the wall, if I remember correctly.
No,
Or am
the
I
wall.
completely making that
There's
up?
like a. There is damage to the wall.
There is okay. I
There's
just
like
couldn't remember or not.
there's like a. It's like the skeleton exploded,
Yes.
and it's just like and it's scattered like black.
I guess. Yeah,
Whatever the
I think
fuck.
just I tried to see what I wanted to see with that, but specifically there's that, and there is a camera.
It's a
pointed
camera
at-
on a tripod, even, that is pointed
Yeah.
at the dead body.
and Lena watches it, and it's a video of Kane sitting in that exact same position, and he's holding a grenade. There's someone talking behind the camera, but you can't really understand what they're saying. Kane starts talking. He starts mentioning he has no idea if he really is Kane or not. His whole reality is just warped.
His sense of
And-
time, his mind, he himself mentions that he can feel the change, having already run its course through him. And he is just settling in. He's sitting down, holding this white phosphorus grenade in his hand. And before he pops it, he tells the other behind the camera that if he finds a Lena, then what was it he said?
I think to take care of her. I think.
Yeah, take care of Lena.
And pulls
And-
the pin, and the grenade blows up. And who else walks out from the camera but the Kane that we saw?
It's the
in
copy Kane.
It's the copy Kane.
And this time, I think that this copy Kane looks exactly as Kane looked the last time that Lena saw him.
Yeah.
Because the Kane that we see detonating the grenade is still dressed in like military fatigues. He's dirty. He's disheveled. He's got a scruffy beard. And he he seems to be almost. He seems to be almost friendly with this copy of himself. He just says,
Yeah.
"Hey, take care of Lena if you find her. You ever seen a white phosphorus grenade go off? You might want to cover your eyes." Like,
Yeah.
it's this bizarre thing in which Kane couldn't process what was happening, but he seemed to accept it in a very gentle way, in that he did not know what this copy was really, or what it wanted even, but he understood that he could not continue existing as he was.
Yeah. And Lena ventures further into the lighthouse, and who else does she find? Perhaps maybe Ventress, whose face is all messed up.
Her Ventress's face is just like melted over like wax.
Yeah. And then starts going on a monologue about what the shimmer is and what it's preparing for, and and specifically says that it's preparing for an annihilation, and then Ventress's body basically, like a bunch of a bunch of light, if I remember, like goes into her, like shoots out of it, and then just implodes into like this like a black hole of some kind that really isn't sucking anything. It's just a constantly morphing and moving hole.
Yeah,
that is just.
It is a. Ventress has this whole dialogue in which she is basically, it's like her complete break from reality, and she's just like ranting, honestly, going on about how it doesn't hate, like going on that the shimmer doesn't hate, or it doesn't care, because it doesn't really know how to. It is completely unlike anything on Earth, completely unlike any kind of existence that we know, and that's all of reality is going to be forever changed or destroyed by it. And yeah, Ventress just says annihilation, and it's as though she just self-immolates into this burst of light, and it's basically a cosmic god entity emerges from Ventress, consumes her completely, and then shifts its focus towards Lena. And there is this moment in which Lena can only stare transfixed at this black hole, this new galaxy being formed, and there is just a tiny bit of like magnetism or gravity that drags just one drop of Lena's blood towards the black hole. And as soon as it enters like the core, you see the cells start to multiply. 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, becomes 32, becomes 64, becomes 100, and so. And Lucy, what is standing there?
Just this metallic looking humanoid being. And the music is so scary in this part. I love the music here. But it's the music itself, like, sounds like it's imploding. Like it's just a bunch of inhuman noises that are warping and moving, and it's terrifying. And this humanoid being, it mimics every single one of Lena's movements. Like, Lena hits it, and then it hits her back. And
Lena runs away. It runs after her.
Yep, and it just mimics her all around it, and it's very creepy. And then it slowly starts to form into her, like her face starts to make its way onto it.
At first, her initial reaction upon seeing this human mockery is to shoot at it when she sees it, and bullets have no effect whatsoever. like a single shot seems to like go through this copy and just is followed, and it just like trails out like a thread, and it then just solidifies. It's part of the body, and then it just retracts back into the metallic thing, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of conscience of its own. It just copies, it mimics, it reflects. It only copies what Lena does. So when she acts aggressively, it responds aggressively. And when she is hurt, it is also hurt. And so, just as Lucy said, there comes a point in which this copy being is very slowly shifting its features to resemble Lena. The face is like this abstract mound of flesh, which gradually grows like hollow eyes, and then it's very gradually filled in with hair details, eyes, and they mirror each other. Lena comes up with a plan to escape almost, and she goes over, she picks up one of the white phosphorus grenades, she approaches the being. There's this almost like ceremonial feeling as she gives this being the phosphorus grenade and like places it in its hands gently, and then she pulls the thing, and it's like you can see her counting inside her head, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and she just books it. She runs out of the lighthouse, she slams the door shut behind her, and the humanoid just kind of like looks as she runs away, and it just stares almost with sadness.
Yeah.
And then the grenade goes off.
It doesn't it in flame.
And it doesn't die outright.
No, it's like alive. I think like even when it tries to leave the lighthouse while it's on fire, and the rest of the lighthouse like goes up in flames along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it stumbles back into the depths of the lighthouse, into the impact zone of the meteor, and it is this entrancing. It is quite frankly a visual marvel, like this whole movie, but this particular sequence is insane. And I actually wrote something here. The mycelium burns. This grand, bizarre metallic thing that was lurking beneath the lighthouse burns. It just burns. The ashes start to rise and scatter. The glass trees that had sprung up along the coastline begin to melt, collapse, shatter, and just break into nothing. And Lena can only stare at the fire as it continues raging on. And now we get like a flashback. We don't get a flashback, actually. We get a flash forward to the scientist, Lomax, I think.
Back at the beginning.
Beginning.
Lomax, back at the beginning.
Where Lena is sitting in the chair, and now we can notice that one of her eyes is blue, just like Cassie's before Lena just had green eyes. So one of the eyes of Lena is now blue, just like Cassie's, and she has a tattoo on her forearm that is of an of the snake eating its own tail, which was the tattoo that Anya had. And so she has...
Lomax also specifically mentions that the shimmer's gone.
Yeah.
Now. Like, it disappeared.
And even with all the shock, Lomax has not been through the horrors that Lena has. And so his first instinct when Lena confirms that there's like possibly it was extraterrestrial, he goes, it was extraterrestrial. Was it carbon based? And it's almost funny that he's asking this. And in any other story that is like hard sci-fi alien encounter, this would be like a completely normal kind of a question to ask. And here it's like, does it matter?
Does it really matter what it was? It's so hard to tell what it is specifically.
I wrote something down here as well. Nothing comes back once it is swallowed by the shimmer. Nothing can escape. Not really. Like a thread eternally being split until nothing remains. All we can see is how it is split, how it is broken, how it detonates. It is in the air, it is the sun, it is a black hole. It is unbound by causality. Or perhaps it is nothing but causality. Infinite evolution, infinitely progressing, transforming, life continuing despite logic, forcing itself to survive. And so this the scientist says, oh yeah, now the shimmer is gone. And also Kane, the copy Kane, is like, he's fine now, actually. And so you see Lena and Kane approach one another, and the song that we were listening, that we could hear earlier on.
Took the same Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song.
Yeah, the same. They are one person, they are two together. That starts playing as they ask each other, like, Lena asks the copy, "Are you Kane?" And he says, "I don't think so." He
asks, "Are you Lena?" And she doesn't respond.
Yeah. He finally says something other than, "I don't know." He doesn't think so. And here's what I wrote down. The scientists have continued their desperate search for meaning in the chaos of creation and destruction. The shimmer did not die. It only changed. It lives on through this copy Kane and, well,
Lena.
quotation marks, Lena.
Yeah, because the final shot of the movie is them embracing, and both of their eyes, their irises, start to morph, and the colors change.
Yeah, and it's just like the shimmer, changing colors like a kaleidoscope.
Yes. The shimmer, like, it's not dead because Lena destroyed it and made it out. A copy of the shimmer made it out being Kane, and also with the shimmer being destroyed, it lives on now in the form of Lena.
Yeah. Lena. Now, and after that's when the movie ends.
Just credits roll there.
Credits roll, and it's actually a very nice credit sequence.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The same music as the scene at the lighthouse, as like a bunch of like.
Oh yeah.
Morphine stuff.
It's like a whale song.
Yeah. It is. This movie is so good. There's so much to say about it, and I still feel like even with this podcast, I couldn't quite get the words out I want to, but I'm so glad that you were here because you were able to word everything in such a elegant way, and it was wonderful.
Also, I have the benefit of having written down.
Yes,
shit.
you do.
So we're not just going over the synopsis.
Yep, I'm so glad that because other than yes, but yeah. Thank you so much for
absolutely.
Wanting to do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe I'd love to have you on another time. Maybe with the rest of the game, that would be fun.
Oh yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, is there any final words you want to say? Anything you want to promote? Places where people can follow you.
Final words to say. Shit. Basically, this is my take at least. The whole movie of Annihilation is what do humans do in the face of a horrific, destructive, or cataclysmic event that they have no control over. Some of them will probably be unable to keep up with it, and they will be destroyed by it. Some of them will lose their minds because of it and self-destruct or endanger other humans who are trying to survive. Some of them may accept that fate. Some of them may even become like doomsayers. And some of them will survive. Just not as the people that they used to be. Lena survives. Kane survives.
She is not herself.
She may not be the Lena that we knew at the beginning of the movie, but she is still Lena in some way. She is still alive. And the shimmer lives on through her. It is not good, it is not evil. It cannot do evil because it does not know what evil even is.
It is simply itself.
It is simply itself. The shimmer is life, completely uncontrolled, without logic, just growing, evolving, adapting. It could not survive as this growing mass of spatial distortion, and so it now lives on through this vessel, these two vessels, and from them perhaps something new will form, but that's all we get to know.
That's just a theory.
And of course, because hey, did you know that I'm actually like you could say that I'm something of a left-leaning individual. Yeah, the shimmer has color. The shimmer is color. It is variation. Things are allowed to die or grow or age in the shimmer. They don't disappear forever, and yet they do, and yet they grow, and yet they decay. It is chaos without any kind of control. Nature, the shimmer, it all has color, but all the spaces of the southern the southern reach border, whatever the fuck.
Yes.
All of their environments are sterile, white, chrome. There is an absence of life and color there. And Lena, this is a callback to the beginning of the movie. When Lena is painting the room that she once shared with Kane and then also shared with Dan in her affair, the room walls used to be green, and at the beginning of the movie, she's trying to paint them over with white. She's trying to erase.
Trying to strip all life from it.
Exactly. It is essentially a movie about coping with loss, moving past it, and in some way accepting that pain, that trauma, will never truly disappear. And maybe
everything stays with you.
Everything
for
remains.
Better and for worse.
Everything remains. It's like, have you ever heard about what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. But there's this thing that clockmakers do with like antique clocks, in that
restoration,
yeah, in that all clocks have a sort of they all have tiny like scrapes and like dents and little lines of like rust or whatever, or corrosion.
Yes.
And all of those marks are almost imperceptible, but every single time that somebody opens up the clock to fix it, for any reason, another mark is formed, and that mark never really goes away.
There's nothing you can do to get rid of them. You can restore it, patch it, paint it up. It's always going to be there. It's always built in.
Yeah. And so the question no longer becomes one of, can you escape it? Because you cannot. You cannot escape the shimmer, life, the chaos of everything.
It becomes how you can live with it.
Exactly. Some people can't. But the idea is that, ideally, well, you can. And how? Well, Lena finds her reason in pure defiance. She simply refuses to accept the shimmer. She does not befriend this humanoid copy. She does not accept that it and herself could coexist. She refuses it outright. She destroys it completely. Both, and not just in a literal sense, because if it was only in a literal sense, then her shooting her gun at it would work. No, she abuses its trust to destroy it from the inside.
Yes.
And in the end, she doesn't really, I wouldn't really say that she even kills it or that she wins. She just survives. And that's what the shimmer is all about. Survival. So she won? Cool. She gets to be the shimmer now.
Yeah.
So yeah. Final words though. Yeah. It was a lot of fun to watch the movie. It was a lot of fun to make this podcast. Yeah. I really want to thank Lucy for letting me come on. Horse for Horror. When are we doing the Horse for Horror Alien podcast? When?
God, whenever I get the, I feel like we're gonna need it because we've done like quite a few Alien movies. But oh my gosh, sometime soon. Thank you so much for coming on. I just want to give a few final words, specifically just about like the podcast. Like I mentioned this on Twitter, but yeah, no way this is done. We're continuing going. Everyone's just been a bit busy. We have a few episodes planned out for movies that we want to do. From what I was talking with Tabs ago, they are going to be finishing up school, which should be in about a month. So in about a month, they should be about free, which means we'll have time to sit down and record and do some stuff. So I wanted to release stuff in the meantime. But yeah, hopefully we should be back to like making stuff semi-normally within a month. We have some movies planned. I'm very excited. And yeah, eventually we'll get to Alien. I'm going to make it happen. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Stay tuned for what we got next. I'm very excited.
Absolutely.
You want to promote anything, any place where people can follow you?
You can find me on Twitter at Nuclear Heart. It's Nuclear HRDT. don't ask me where that came up from. I just retweet shit over there. Ideally, at some point in the future, I should be posting my art and shit. Yeah. And also, you could say that. You could say that. You could you could say that. You could say that Lena was in a situation in which there was a imposter among her crew.
Fuck off.
Emergency meeting.
Emergency. Why does every single episode of the show we talk about Among Us?
Yo, I love the part. I love the part of the movie in which Lena totally morbs all over.
The whole like scene where they're all tied up. That's it. The interrogation. That's the emergency meeting.
Yeah.
Who's been sussing the shimmer?
The researcher just walks up and is like, Lena, we've heard that you've been acting a bit sus lately. What do you have to say for yourself? And she just smiles and goes like, huh, you think that I was the one being sus?
Follow Horse for Horror on Twitter.
Follow Horse for Horror.
Follow Horse for Horror on Twitter at horrors 4 and horror. And yeah, you can listen to this podcast wherever you want. Yeah, listen to the other three episodes. Those other 3 episodes are very fun. We'll have more out for you soon. I believe the theme that we're going to be doing is slashers. So we each have a slasher film that we've picked out.
Yeah.
I posted a little hint a while ago on the Twitter as to what they may be. I don't know if they'll be the same, but I assume that they will be. But yeah, stay tuned for that.
Annihilation does not fit within the slasher category, but you know what? Fuck it. Genre is not a thing. It's not real.
Genre is not a thing.
It's not real.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you. And I will see you next time.